Are establishing Prevents Task Force to develop a nationwide strategy to support our veterans in distress and stop the grave tragedy of veteran suicide. Today, thanks to the leadership of Secretary Wilkie, been outstanding, I'm proud to announce that we are taking this critical initiative to the next level. Following the ambitious roadmap the task force has developed, over the last year, you'll see things happening that nobody would have ever thought even possible.
On March 5th, 2019, the president signed an executive order which created the Prevents Task Force. Now, this task force was tasked with coming up with a new strategy and plan to help alleviate what has been a 2-decade-long suicide and mental health epidemic. Our veterans have struggled and struggled more with regards to mental health care issues, and everyone is curious as to why this continues to be such a huge issue. Congress has generously increased our veterans' mental health care budget from $2.5 billion to nearly $10 billion a year. And suicide has not gotten any better. In fact, it is getting worse. To understand this issue, we need to look back just a little bit, and I'm going to be quick about this. Some of this story starts in 2015 when the Clay Hunt Act was signed by President Obama. Now, one of the small little details of that legislation, which in fact is still the primary bullet point listed on President Obama's website with regards to this act, is a requirement that a third party evaluate the effectiveness of VA programs and services. Now, this evaluation was completed, and on December 26, 2018, literally the deepest, darkest hole you could drop a report into, the administration delivered that report to Congress. Now, I'm sure you're thinking that Congress was furious that A, the report was months late. Our veterans are dying. I'm sure you're thinking that Congress took the report and fired up the congressional hearings, right? Let me put this in perspective. Tens of thousands of veterans are dying from suicide. Tens of thousands of Americans are dying from COVID. Can you imagine America allowing a report on the effectiveness of COVID treatments going completely ignored right now? Well, that's exactly what happened. Nothing, nada, zip. Not a single hearing, not a single press release, nothing. So what is in the report? Well, all the more concerning, long story short, it basically stated that veterans who were receiving traditional mental health care or PTSD specialty care treatments were not having clinically significant outcomes. In basic, VA mental health care programs are not working for most veterans most of the time. So in my opinion, at the White House, they recognize, Houston, we have a major problem. What we are doing doesn't work. So on March 5th, 2019, they fire up the press engine and President Trump signs Executive Order 13861 to create a suicide roadmap to amplify and accelerate the progress in addressing veteran suicide in the United States. Answering this call to action requires an aspirational, innovative, all-hands-on-deck approach to public health, not government as usual. Okay, so fast forward a year later, and what do we have? Well, the crux of the Prevents proposal is really focused on a few key ideas. One is integration. Something the government is just generally not very good at. Federal agencies must work in partnership with state, local, territorial, tribal governments, as well as non-government entities and organizations to ensure that all efforts are conducted in a manner that increases capacity to coordinate and integrate resources, identify and fill resource gaps in a timely and efficient manner, coordinate a model of proactive support and treatment for every veteran. So long story short, sounds good, definitely has been tried, honorable to try again. I mean, we should be doing these things, it's not to knock it, but it is to note, throw Justin here on the record as good luck. and I do hope you do well. One of the other key components of this is an increased investment on public outreach and PSA type events. Now, these public events and PSAs are, not new. I mean, we've been doing these for decades. Michelle Obama was running around with Madagascar penguins. We've had Tom Hanks involved in PSAs. We've got the Be There campaign. Long story short, there has been a lot of outreach. I think if you are a veteran and you are not aware of the outreach that VA has done in this area, if you are not aware that VA has a suicide hotline, please let us know. We'll get you that information, but I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, I've seen those. And they're good. I mean, I guess. I think we should keep doing it. I think veterans should know there are resources available to them. But what about that report? What about that report saying that these services are clinically ineffective? We can encourage veterans to come use programs, but if they are clinically ineffective, shouldn't we be trying to build new programs that are effective? So what about that? Where are we putting that money? How are we supporting those? Are we doing any of that? Well, in the proposal, they do discuss some of this. They suggest that they will begin researching effective programs and services and creating a new culture at VA and elsewhere in serving veterans. So to me, if this is going to do anything, it needs to start supporting finding and funding alternative approaches that show promise to be more effective. And to do that, we need to start finding and funding people who we have not been finding and funding for the past 2 decades. Otherwise, we are going to come to similarly flawed and failed proposals. Let me say that again. If we find and fund the same people, we will come to similarly flawed endpoints. We will not be helping veterans. So, any other naysayers? I'm not even a naysayer. Just if we are going to do this right, we need to make sure we are finding new and innovative programs. And am I the only person saying this? I'm not. In fact, the Journal of American Medical Association has now come out with their third report highlighting how they believe VA programs and services to be generally ineffective for most veterans most of the time. And what is their number one recommendation? Find new and innovative programs. So how do you find new and innovative programs? Do you fund what you have done for the last 2 decades? You don't. Is there such thing as an evidence-based, non-existent program? There's not. You have to fund and try new things, determine their effectiveness, and then scale them. So, any naysayers to the Prevents program? Well, there is. Chairman Mark Takano from the House Veterans Affairs Committee, in fact, is not a fan. He suggests it is disappointing that the president's Prevents report was advanced with limited input from veteran service organizations and the lawmakers charged with implementing veterans policy and working on behalf of our nation's veterans. Tepid calls for more research, interagency coordination, and meek public education campaigns won't do enough to end this crisis. We have much more substantial work to do to prevent veteran suicide and ultimately help save veterans' lives. So, putting Chairman Takano on the record, he opposes this. To be honest, in some sense, it seems canned. It seems political in nature. There are some positives. What do I like about the roadmap? More hands on deck. As difficult as it is to get these federal agencies to play nice with one another, and even harder to get them to meaningfully engage the community, that is important. Changing VA culture. I was able to ask the secretary a question following the White House ceremony. And to his credit, he stated that we've been going about mental health incorrectly. He highlighted that we've been trying to cure pain with pharmaceuticals and that veterans are looking for alternatives, and that VA needed to change their culture. To me, that was a breath of fresh air. In 5 years, what do I think this will accomplish if no other actions were taken? I think some more public service announcements are on the way, but this has been done before. Michelle Obama did PSAs about veterans with Madagascar penguins. Tom Hanks has done them. They're not bad, but they're not enough. I think that some level of coordination among agencies and community providers will improve, particularly at the state level. This is positive, but a game changer, as in a significant reduction in suicide 5 years from now? Probably not. Where this plan comes up short? Well, it does recommend a grant program for community providers. The report fails to address the monster in the room. We're spending nearly $10 billion a year on mental health programs and treatments that are mediocre at best and largely ineffective for most veterans most of the time. I see this proposal as the largest funnel in the world, encouraging veterans to go to a system that in large part doesn't help them become their best selves and focuses on the tired, broken treatments being peddled by those that support the status quo. Not surprisingly, the same people making money from this way of doing business: mental health providers and their associations and VA's union. While Secretary Wilkie's words were encouraging, his highlighting of programs that veterans are begging for in non-pharmacological whole health alternatives, the money is simply not there. And this plan does not make a significant enough down payment that if fully enacted in 5 years, there would be enough of a change to write home about. I think AMVET's recommendation may be the best way forward on this issue. They called for all new proposed funding for mental health care to be placed into alternative approaches and in education programs for veterans and service members to teach them how to become and maintain a status of mentally healthy. Further, while there is not enough emphasis on mental health education for service members and transition support, teaching veterans how to be mentally healthy, giving them the resources on the front end, should be heavily prioritized over spending billions on these mental health programs that don't work for most. They didn't work for Clay Hunt, and they didn't work for John Scott Hannon, who were both receiving VA mental health care. It is time we debunk the myth of evidence-based care. The reality is there is little evidence evidence-based treatments are effective. In fact, on the contrary, the evidence is substantial that they are ineffective. Thanks for joining us on the Nimitz Report. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our channel, like the video. Also head to our website and sign up for the Nimitz Report Weekly, where we provide an update on everything that's going on for the week, news you want to know, events you want to know about.